Hey, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Mike Carlson, and I'm going to be
And I'm Brian Hasenbottom.
and we're going to be hosting a show called The View from the U. And just a little bit about myself is I'm a huge college football fan. I have been. I mean, since I was really little. I enjoy watching the Notre Dame Fighting Irish play. They're really my favorite team, and they have been for a long time. I also like watching USC, so I'm on both sides of the rivalry there, I guess you could say. My favorite player is Johnny Manziel, and I'm gonna be all over the place, covering a lot of different places and a lot of different conferences. So I'll turn it over to Brian now.
All right, I'm Brian Hasenbottom, and I'm all about the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets, as you can see. Other teams I like, I'm big on the Northwestern Wildcats and the Stanford Cardinal. And I'm just like Mike. I'm a huge college football fan. I've been that forever. And you can catch me primarily covering the Big Ten, as you can see, and the ACC. But I'll be covering some other divisions as well. So right now I'm going to pitch it back to Mike for the call on the Notre Dame Fighting Irish and the Oklahoma Sooners. Mike, take it away.
Awesome, thanks, Brian. Well, one of the things that I saw here was obviously Oklahoma came out on top against the Irish, and for me, the big key in that game was the turnovers by Tommy Rees and the Notre Dame offense. I mean, you're looking at a team that had two interceptions, both that resulted in points, and then a fumble that indirectly resulted in points. So the Irish offense really couldn't get going, couldn't find a rhythm, and I think Rees was part of that. I mean, and then you also look at the bad play by the defense. Blake Bell, who was in his second career start, just couldn't get it together against the Irish, I think, and got it together against the Irish rather, as he showed up at the big stage and played well, had 2 touchdowns, no turnovers, and for the Irish, like I said, it came down to the turnovers, the fact that most of the turnovers led to points, and that the defense really couldn't stop Blake Bell in this Oklahoma attack. And Brian, really one of the things that I want to focus on is Malik Zaire. He's the freshman quarterback right now, and he's the backup to Tommy Rees. And one has to wonder when Brian Kelly's going to play Malik Zaire, and if the future is now. I mean, you look at a guy like Rees, he's on his way out, he's a senior. And you look at a guy like Zaire, who could be a potential game changer in this Irish offense. You look at him and you compare him to last year's quarterback, Everett Golson, and you see a guy who has a very similar body type. You see a guy who runs the same and can run a spread option offense, and a guy who's familiar with that kind of offense. So Kelly came out this week and said that he was firmly behind Tommy Rees as quarterback, but you got to think if you're an Irish fan or if you're a college football fan that Malik Zaire is going to find his way into the lineup. And now I'll turn it back over to you, Brian, for the call on your game.
All right, so this past weekend on Thursday in Atlanta, the Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets hosted the Virginia Tech Hokies in the annual Battle of the Techs, and as with most rivalry games, they came out with interesting uniforms. Georgia Tech had some very classy throwbacks, but Virginia Tech came out with these really weird helmets. They have a dark brick pattern, which I don't know what that means at Virginia Tech, but apparently it's important. I'm not sure it works on a football helmet, as does the academic logo painted on the side, which really just was not a good look for the Hokies. Now, it is almost uncanny how much like our programs performed in this last week. I mean, if you look at it, Georgia Tech did much of the same things that Notre Dame did. They lost a turnover differential. On their first 2 drives, there were 2 forced fumbles, one of which occurred on the second play of the game and resulted in a Virginia Tech touchdown that really gave them the early momentum. The quarterback, Vad Lee, was 1 for 4 with an interception in the first quarter, which makes sense. Georgia Tech's primarily a running offense. They run the option a lot, and they were actually successful with that because Vad Lee was even keeping the ball and confusing the Virginia Tech defense. So both Vad Lee and the whole running back core for Georgia Tech was just stellar early. But what wasn't stellar early was the false starts. Georgia Tech had 5 on their first 3 drives. And as a fan, that's just something that makes you want to throw a rock at the television. Just something you never want to see from your team. But one person who played well, because Georgia Tech only got a field goal in the first half, and the perpetrator of that was Harrison Butker, weird spelling. He may only be 2 for 4 in his career at Georgia Tech. He's a redshirt kicker, but those 2 field goals he has made have been from 50 yards, and that leg strength you really don't see often in a redshirt special teams player. So at the beginning of the second half, that's when Georgia Tech started to really start coming back, In the first half, they had problems with receivers stepping out of bounds on easy catches, something that again really angered me. But they were able to throw it more in the middle of the field and get that passing game going. And also, the very experienced Georgia Tech offensive line. There were a lot of pass rush mismatches, which gave Vadley a lot of time and really built some good drives for the Yellow Jackets. So, switching now to Virginia Tech, basically the whole story was their defense. Derek Hopkins, especially, All-American linebacker, one of the key members of that fifth-ranked national defense, and he probably got a hand on the ball carry on every play, 7 total tackles, and some of which being for key fourth down stops, which really turned the tables for the Hokies. Switching now to offense, the quarterback Logan Thomas had a stellar game, mostly because he is 6'6" and 254 pounds. They ran the QB draw a lot, and it sometimes took 5 or 6 Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets to bring him down. I mean, he was just a one-man wrecking machine right through that defensive line. And that really helped the Hokies out a lot because their running backs were not productive at all. I don't know how many runs they had, but they certainly didn't make a splash as far as yards. But Thomas, going back to him, was also very effective in the passing game. Georgia Tech tried a man coverage against him, but he was just too accurate. The receivers were too quick, and the Yellow Jackets just had no answers for that. So, sum it all up, Georgia Tech lost because their receivers, it was just a big combination of them not making the big catches that they needed, and because Vadley played a very good game for a man who's considered typically a rushing quarterback, sort of more athletic style quarterback, not so much with the cannon arm. He did well, but the receivers did not step up. And Virginia Tech, their defensive line, their defense in general, really just stopped this Yellow Jacket offense that has really, I mean, look at the stats. They put up 70 points on Elon, 38 points on Duke, 28 on North Carolina. So Virginia Tech just stepped up and only held them to 10 points. So right now I'm going to bring Mike back on for us to talk about next week's games. Mike?
So next week I'm going to be covering the Stanford-Washington game, and Brian, this game is it's going to be a great game. I think it's very underrated in the big scope of college football action going on this weekend. I mean, you're looking at a Stanford team that has consistently excelled in the Pac-12 and has really dominated that division since the beginning of the John Harbaugh era. And I really feel like that's going to be an underrated matchup. And you look at a Stanford team that is extremely under the radar. I mean, the post Andrew Luck era for them has gone as well as the Andrew Luck era went for them. I mean, their quarterback play has been great, their offense play has been great, and especially their defense. That's stood out. And you would think that with the subtraction of a coach like John Harbaugh or Jim Harbaugh, I can't figure it out. They're confusing brothers, but you would think that with that kind of a subtraction, that they would take a huge step back. But head coach David Shaw has really played well for them, has really coached well for them rather. And I think it's going to be a great game, Brian.
Yeah, I mean, you and I both were on upset watch. I mean, I'm covering the 16th ranked Northwestern Wildcats hosting the 4th ranked Ohio State Buckeyes. And I mean, Northwestern, much like Washington, is a team that really hasn't been on the map in the past. I mean, remember Washington last year lost to CU, which I think was their only win of the season. I mean, these two programs have really stepped up and excelled. I mean, College Game Day is going to be in Evanston, and I'm just really looking forward to it. The quarterback Kane Coulter, who actually went to high school a few blocks down from where we go, but he's been having a great season. You know, Trevor Simeon, they've really got everything working for them at Northwestern. We'll just see if they can pull it off against one of the biggest names in college football.
And Brian, you bring up a great point. This is a Northwestern team that is extremely under the radar. I mean, very quietly going 4-0 to start off the year. And Ohio State hasn't lost in something like 670-plus days. So Northwestern looking to break that streak this weekend in Evanston.
Yeah, I mean, the one game that I sort of saw as like a standard measure was against Cal. Both teams played them. Cal really gave Northwestern a run for their money, but Cal was absolutely destroyed by the Buckeyes. So hopefully we won't see that same sort of parallel occur in the game, which is Northwestern's homecoming game, but we'll see. Hopefully it's going to be a good matchup.
Yeah, definitely shaping up to be a great matchup. Both great games this week. And signing off, I'm Mike Carlson.
I'm Brian Hasenbuttel. Thank you for watching. Please click like, comment, and subscribe. We'll see you next week.
See you next week, everybody.